What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the 2008 mixtape by D12. Basically, this product is called Return to the Dozen Volume 1, and it came out in the spring of 2008. So basically, D12 had taken a series of years off. Proof had passed on in like the spring of 2006, which was vastly unfortunate. Eminem's best friend, he was Eminem's best friend and an excellent band member in D12 as far as pitch like that kind of happened. If you look hard enough, you can see the fact in like the double XL and like a couple, and probably like double XL magazines from early 2006, there were some, there there were like some primers for like a D12 album that was going to happen. The third D12 album was originally going to come out in the fall of 2006, but once Proof passed in like the spring, April 2006, it nixed those plans. They had, I don't know how far along they were, but there are some like songs floating around on YouTube, some pitches like that. Apparently they had a song that they were going to do with Nate Dogg and some ones like that. I remember Jackal Goldkick showing me like a couple songs that they had worked on around that time. It's vastly disappointing. It would have been interesting because apparently there were rumors floating around that like Eminem was going to be on it a lot less as far as those pitches going to happen. He probably would have only been on maybe one of like the 2 or 3 singles that would have come out of that project, and it may not have even been the lead single. I think it would have been different from like the pitch of like the way My Band was, where Eminem was like the star of that particular show, and How Come and some of those type ones that I'd say. But D12 definitely stands on their own. This is a pretty good concept here. The embrace of this particular project has a lot of good appeal about it, because I want to say that possibly some of these might have been stuff just around the time. I don't know as full blown if this was something new, but it's just the concept that there is at least one Proof verse here on the song Suicide, which is a pretty excellent concept. Maybe they had saved on to that for like the third D12 album, but Proof is not actually on this particular project, minus that one song. Eminem's not on here at all. So it's basically Con Artist, Conniva, Swift, and Bizarre, which is a pretty good pitch to get the which is a pretty good pitch to get these folks. But I kind of look after it. There's some new embrace on this particular product that is interesting because it's different from like the 2004 D12 world, from the 2004 album D12 world. When I look at that particular album, it's just a lot more campy, and the humor that that particular album had that was kind of similar to like Eminem's Encore as far as pitches like that can happen. D12 world's humor not really on this particular product. It's definitely some mixtape type fare, but it takes to like the sound that Bizarre and King Gordy do pretty damn well. It's just a good concept that the other D12 members, Conniva, Swift, and Con Artist, at least attempted some of this particular type of sound. King Gordy is on here more than 4 or 5 times, so it's an excellent type pitch. He doesn't really drop a verse on this particular product, but he does do a lot of hooks, and they're pretty horrorcore sounding. I do appreciate that concept. So that's what D12 was up to circa early 2008 as far as those pitches can happen. It's not every single song that's like that, but it is just a good concept. This is a pretty skittery type project. It's an overall kind of dark and just affluence type one that just is a different valve. When you see like the zombie hand that's coming out of like the garbage on this particular album, it's just a good concept to kind of see that it's kind of like a revival and a resuscitation as far as that particular pitch kind of happens, but it does it pretty well. I would have to say, I mean, this mixtape's not going to get a classic score, but I would have to say that there's more than a handful of gems on here that are definitely worth the appeal behind it. and at least to say, as far as mixtape rappers, they have some pretty good appeal and stuff. Now, this was basically their first project that they put out past, like, once again, Proof's death in early 2006, and then like just after D12 World. So this is the first project that kind of happened. I was almost questioning if there was like a project in 2007, but that was originally going to be an album that just didn't manifest. That's kind of the concept. I would probably say, I would almost guess that back in 2005, 2006, they're probably maybe 30, 40, maybe 50% done with that particular album as far as those pitches going to happen, but it just got scrapped, and that's kind of the concept. I look after it. Some good stuff here. Like I said, this new horrorcore embrace really suits them pretty damn well, and there's just a lot of this overall tumultuous and kind of just haunting type productions that are great for the cooler weather and pitches like that, I'd have to say. So it just, I mean, without Eminem, it loses some of that comedic type. Push. I'd have to say it's not like Encore or like Curtain Call, like songs like Fack and My Band and some of those type ones, and songs like Rain Man off Encore, even though that doesn't have D12 on there. It just doesn't really have that. It doesn't really have like that comedic aspect as far as those pitches can happen. But I do like this overall dark and morose type pitch that this particular product has, even if it's a decent mixtape. I'd say it's not, like I said, it's not a classic. It has some blunders on here, but it's not as full blown. So I'll go ahead and talk about the songs I recommend. So there's 19 songs in this particular mixtape. There's 21 songs in the mixtape, minus the intro and outro, which is just basically like this talking bits as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. I'd have to say there's 19 songs in here, and out of those 19, I recommend at least 9 songs that are original songs, plus 2 songs that are freestyles to other instrumentals, which those two songs would be Cheating in the Bedroom and I'm a G, both pretty good aspects. Cheating in the Bedroom is like a remix to like the Gucci Mane song. The Gucci Mane song I Know Why, which is a pretty good pitch to kind of get that one. Clever concept, not a ton of folks really do that song. And then I'm a G is a redo of like Rick Ross's I'm a Boss from early 2008. So that's a pretty good pitch. I'm glad this mixtape was original. Just like the aspect of being able to say that particular pitch fit pretty well. It's being able to say, I mean, they transformed those songs into pretty good affluent type ones. So I would recommend checking out some of those type pitches, just getting them on those particular songs. But so I'll go ahead and recommend the 9 songs out of 19 I recommend on here, or the 9 songs out of the remaining 17 that I recommend on here. So that's a pretty good pitch here. So basically those songs would be Win or Lose, I Am Gone, You Never Know, That's the Way That Goes, You're Not Gangsta, This Situation, Suicide, I'm From the D, and We Back. I'm From the D and We Back. That's a good concept for some of these. So basically, it seems like We Back was pretty close to being like a single. It's just an interesting type pitch about it, but it just has the real kind of tone about it. Yeah, We Back is definitely something ghastly. It just reminds me of something that Tim Burton would have done in like the 80s, 90s, some of those type pitches as far as that particular kind of goes. Just, I mean, it has like that haunting type of feel. But the thing about D12 is they were always kind of vanilla rap as far as that pitch kind of went. Even though they were more gangster rap, I look after they were pretty vanilla, just in like the tone, just a good kind of relative kind of starting point, just because their affiliation with Eminem and Dr. Dre and 50 Cent, some of those type folks. They're just more vanilla rap within that tone, but just being able to say that they did pick up like a pretty menacing type dark sheen on this particular project, which works pretty well. But just the concept, but just how many folks really embraced horrorcore around that particular time, because King Gordy was at least around in like the early 2000s and pitches like that when D12 was putting out albums, but just the concept that King Gordy was not really on D12 world, but it's just a good concept that they found some new allies and just this new sheen of this stuff that kind of works pretty well on here. The concept behind, I feel like at least We Back seems like some sort of buzz single. I don't know the promotion about this particular product, if there really was anything. Just kind of concept. I remember that they kind of made some noise about it in like early 2008, but this is kind of the concept that you know, back in like the 2000s, mixtapes didn't really have singles as much like that. So this is kind of the thing. But We Back is basically like a ghastly kind of haunted house party kickoff of a song, I would definitely have to say. Good horrorcore embrace, I would have to say, and it's a good new look for D12 as far as that pitch can happen. So this is just a concept, but just something, this kind of the commercial bite within a relative sense of something like My Band or like Purple Pills without like the mammoth kind of megaton hook or something like that, or just the overall snap, and obviously not having Eminem on there, but just the concept. I mean, I don't say obviously like it's just a bad song without Eminem, but just the concept is just more mixtape bound, but just has the format of being something relatively commercial for a mixtape. It's probably one of the more ones that has like the radio flavor about it. This, like I said, this is vanilla rap from D12. It's just kind of the concept that this would be a good, easy enough kind of starting point for like mixtape type fare for folks that, you know, fuck with Eminem and Dr. Dre and Exhibit and 50 Cent, some of those type folks who are just looking for like the concept of just wondering about mixtapes from like the 2000s. Good concept for that. Real nice, good buzz song to kind of get. That's the Way That Goes is a nice one. It's like a blitzing kind of nightclub jam, I would have to say in particular. It's like a good dance bounce about this particular song, and this is just like got some dark commercial bites. This is another one that probably could have been a single had it had like the promotion about it, I would definitely have to say. This is just some real shrill type stuff. Just really works for like a Halloween era and just kind of more autumn bound. This works for like a more Halloween type era and autumn bound type nightclub jam to kind of get just within the sense of like some dance bounce and just easy kind of twerk song for ladies and dance club gem to kind of get here just within a mixtape sense. It's pretty dope as hell, the fact that this particular product is free, just because there's a number of gems on here. Now this particular product does not have a ton of commercial bite. A lot of this horrorcore type embrace, even if it is vanilla rap for like folks that you may see in like the mixtape type fare, I still would have to say that kind of the concept about it is, in terms of like dance club songs, if you're looking for something by D12 like Purple Pills or Fight Music or How Come or like My Band, some of those type ones, it kind of is a little bit seedier this time. I mean, I feel like at least the songs We Back and That's the Way That Goes are at least something within that relative pitch, but it just kind of, it's basically like a taste of like Bizarre's albums from like the late 2000s and King Gordy's products from the 2000s. I'd say it's a pretty good concept for that. But Suicide is a pretty nice one. It's like a relative kind of jive and bounce in like a dark and morose format, I'd have to say. It's like a good secret D12 gem, I'd have to say. And this has a pretty good proof verse on here, so it's a good good concept kind of get that proof. It's excellent to kind of get him because he was a pretty shredding lyricist. He could keep up with Eminem, pitches like that. So can the rest of D12. I look after it. There's good concept here. This has some relative jive about it. Like I was saying, this is probably another one that goes with that. This is another nice one that goes with that's the way that goes as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just some real hype kind of mansion darkness to kind of get just within the relative thrill, just like some house party, just overall perilousness, or just some overall house party shrillness to kind of get good concept for that. I'm From the D is a pretty nice one. It's like a darkly glittering kind of city embrace of a song, I'd have to say. This song is starry-eyed, but it's dark within the sense of it, just within that same appeal. It's just kind of out on the town and like an evening type sense to kind of get here, and this is just like some nice pizzazz. So if you like songs like Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z, it's a little bit before that song particularly came out, but it's a real starry-eyed kind of city embrace as far as that would particularly kind of happen. Just a concept of just appreciating like the city lights and just maybe having some smokage in your system, just a little bit jazz or pitches like that as far as that particular kind of goes. Just out and about socially, just within that aspect, but then just kind of more just in an optimistic and productive type mood. I'd have to say it's a pretty excellent concept. Kind of get that one. Just real nice city bop to kind of get. You're Not Gangsta is a pretty nice one. Some of these have King Gordy on here. I feel like there's a number of ones on here. Some songs like I Am Gone, Win or Lose, some of these type ones, This Situation, and like Mrs. Pitts, some of these type ones in particular. It's just a ton of these on here. You're Not Gangster, some of these ones that had King Gordy, but once again, he mostly does the hooks on here. But yeah, You're Not Gangsta is basically like a shrill and creeping kind of stock mixtape horrorcore. I would have to say good concept for that. It's like some good gothic turn up, I'd have to say. So Bizarre definitely goes hand in hand with this newfound angle from D12 as far as those pitches kind of happen. I think I just like the concept of getting some of this. The rest of D12 does as well. It's a good concept. Didn't realize that they were more on that horrorcore type tip. I mean, it was kind of a disappointment that like Kaniva, Con Artist, and Swift kind of disappeared after about like the mid-late 2000s. Basically, after about Eminem Presents the Re-Up and after Proof died, most of these folks just kind of disappeared. I mean, Bizarre at least put out a series of albums which I reviewed, and King Gordy, he had affiliation with King Gordy throughout the rest of the 2000s and 2010s, but the other three members of D12 just kind of were not as commonly there. Like I want to say nowadays, somewhere in the 2010s, Swift dropped an album, some pitches like that. I'd have to say it was just an interesting concept that some of these D12 members took to this like a fish to water. It's just an interesting type concept to get some of these. You're Not Gangster has that sort of appeal, but definitely Bizarre and King Gordy, classic combination just within that pitch. But the rest of D12 is on here as well, so it's a good concept. That it's a real kind of monster mash gangsta kind of horrorcore party, I'd have to say within that. Win or Lose is like some creeping kind of Dracula like grimness from D12. I would definitely have to say is like a shady evening local commute, I would feel like, and it's a good song to toke to. So Win or Lose is a Swifty only song. I'd have to say a pretty good concept, kind of get that. I just look after the pitch. Now King Gordy does help on the hook on Win or Lose. It's just a real dark and morose type one. I mean, for the time, for 2008, this was relatively original just because it was kind of vanilla rap embracing some of the horrorcore type stuff that would kick off more and like, or at least was productive and more like the underground format in like the 2000s. But it's just a good concept where underground kind of meets more mainstream as far as that pitch kind of happens. But it's just kind of a concept that I feel like this got King Gordy like some relative. I feel like, you know, folks like Swift and Kaniva and Con Artist and Bizarre, some of those type folks embracing like the horrorcore type sound a little bit more, just kind of got it to more like, this is probably one of King Gordy's more notable projects, even though this is not really a King Gordy project. This kind of concept, this is one of his more bigger ones, I'd have to say, apart from maybe like the Last American Rockstars project and the one that was produced by Eminem from 2003, which I forget what that album's called, but it's King Gordy's 2003 album. I think it's The Entity or something. For the most part, King Gordy is not that commercial, but it's just some good concepts that he really has that relative appeal on here. But I Am Gone is another nice one that kind of has that relative aspect. King Gordy on the hook again. It's like a good 1-2 punch with Win or Lose. I would definitely feel like some more excellent D12 horrorcore. I'd have to say the whole D12 is on here, or at least 3 of them are on this particular song, I'd have to say, and it's like a good spooky bop to kind of get. Just some good concepts. So it's definitely great for autumn, like I was saying, cooler weather pitches like that. Just anywhere between like late August to about late November, early December, just that crispness of like some good bristling kind of autumn fatigue. I'd have to say good concepts for that. You Never Know is a pretty nice one as well. As like a bristling kind of real talk song. I'd have to say good concept just within that. Basic kind of devilish evening commute, I would definitely have to say, and it's just good for like some local errands. This particular song doesn't have like the sheer kind of haunting piano beat of like I Am Gone and Win or Lose and some of those type ones, I'd have to say, but it is a dope enough type one. A little bit like I'm From the D, just relative city kind of hop and bop, just within the sense of just being more localized within it, just more Taco Bell, gas station, burrito type pickup, frozen pizza type pickup, some of that type fare, just the concept of just like some late smoke edge. Yeah, just some real nice brisk autumn brush. I'd have to say some good concept for that, just for like the October, September type fare, I'd have to say. And then I'm trying to think if there's any other song I haven't covered on here. I don't think I've talked about This Situation. That's it. So that's another nice one. It's like a dark and perilous kind of horrorcore gem. I'd have to say it's like good fodder for like a local stroll. I definitely the song is like good fodder for like local strolls at night as far as that pitch kind of happens, and definitely some good one to kind of have some smokage and smoking for. I'd have to say good concept for that. It's relative type pitch. I mean, most of this product is just 3-6 Mafia like just within the nightbound or just residential type fare. I mean, more so than like the nightclub bounce. I mean, I feel like there's a couple nightclub songs on here, at least within the product, is some of that. I feel like probably We Back, That's the Way That Goes, and Suicide would be some relative pitches that have that relative type appeal, just like some step out within that sense. But it's actually a little bit more residential wise. It's when you think of folks like Juicy J, King Gordy, Bizarre, and like his albums from the late 2000s, some of those type folks that did that relative horrorcore and just ghastliness as far as that pitch gun goes. Project Pat, some of those type folks. Definitely good for the smoker's toolkit. I'd have to say some good concepts. Just picking up frozen burritos, getting like a frozen pizza, some of those type pitches, getting like some good stuff, getting some Chex Mix, some of those type fares, just getting like pitches, good gas station food, and just snacking as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's great for after hours and like the autumn crisp weather. It really works for that. But yeah, I would say that's about the songs I recommend on here. So 9 out of 19. Also including like the 2 extra songs, so it'd be 11 out of 19. I'd have to say that's a pretty good pitch for that. So I'm going to go ahead and give this mixtape me recommending 11 songs out of 19 on here. At like basically, I'm going to give this project basically like a 6.75 out of 10. And talk about some of these songs I don't recommend on here. Some of these type ones, like Don't Hate was just kind of a Blueprint-esque type beat by Jay-Z, some of that type there. Just a more kind of East Coast type sound that felt more like a Jim Jones and kind of more just big city type one that just didn't really have the appeal behind it. Felt like something that Beanie Siegel or Jay-Z or Jim Jones would have done, but just didn't really have the appeal behind it. Mrs. Pitts was just kind of a disappointing type one. I mean, I recognize that one was out of respect for Bugs as far as that pitch gun goes. I mean, I would suppose that that's a decent type one. It's just the commonness of how often it would be listened to. I mean, if you're not kind of in a more morning type mode, and by morning I mean like death morning as far as that pitch kind of happens with this, it's not as much like an Apple type one. I would suppose I'm going to go ahead and say I recommend Mrs. Pitts. I'm going to go ahead and say that that's the 12th song out of 19 I recommend. So I'm going to go ahead and up the score to like a 7.25 out of 10. I would basically have to say it's a pretty good concept for that. So this is basically like a morose type one to kind of get this the concept of fallen homies and pitches like that. Obviously, this is donated to Bugs from D12, which was the band member that passed before they even put out Devil's Night. As far as those pitches kind of happened, just real nice kind of brushy type one to kind of get this relative sense of this kind of a forlorn type one. This reminds me, this kind of has that affable type bite of just a real glum type one to sip some 40s to and pour out some liquor to. As far as those pitches kind of happen, good concept for that. So it's a good nice affable type one. Some of these ones on here, like Get This Paper was just kind of a clumsy type production, and so was The Drill. Some of these type ones were just kind of more Wu-Tang-esque type ones that just didn't pull out the vibe nearly as well as they particularly needed to. I just look after it like, I mean, I feel like some of these type ones just kind of feel like more of cypher type beats that just didn't really have the full-blown appeal about it. I mean, something to keep in mind is that D12 were kind of freestyle and cypher type rappers within a relative sense, so they were able to do that just like Eminem was, but they just didn't really have the affable type bite, and it's too bad that more of the D12 members weren't on this particular one. Proof and Bizarre aren't on here, which is a disappointing type pitch. I mean, I realize that Proof may not have been alive, but it's just the concept. I feel like probably there's not a ton of songs on this particular product apart from You Never Know that really has like all 4 of the D12 members. It's usually just 3 of them, which always means that there's at least one D12 member that's not on the song. I would have liked for more D12 members to kind of been on here just within the standard package. I mean, they did it on the album, so I feel like it probably could have had a concept where there could have been more, even if they would have had to shorten some of the verses, but it would have been more affable within that. But Plead for Your Life was just a clumsy type production. Didn't really appreciate this one. Had Royce the 5'9" on here, which would have been a pretty good pitch. Once again, there were only 2 D12 members in combination with Royce the 5'9", so that basically meant that two D12 members sat this one out, which was an unfortunate type pitch. I just didn't really appreciate like the build of that particular production. It was just trying to be like a it's just kind of a lyrical type one where it's trying to center more on the lyrics, but just didn't really have the appeal of something buzzing or something kinetic, I'd have to say. If You Want It had some decent kind of woozy kind of nightclub type appeal. It was a decent kind of dance bop to kind of get, but it probably should have had more of the D12 members on here. It was just kind of a disappointing type concept, kind of have that one. It felt like that was a relative type one, but it just probably needed more. I think it probably should have had the full D12 on there. The Drill was just kind of a clumsy cypher type beat, like I was saying, and then Throw 'em Up High was just one that, and then Throw 'em Up High was just kind of like a mixtape soul type one, some of that Don Cannon type fashion of like 2000s mixtapes like Lil Wayne and Jeezy and Cameron and some of those type folks that did that sort of thing in like 2005, 2007, some of those type pitches, but it just didn't have the same appeal seeing D12 on those particular type ones. So that's kind of the appeal behind it. It's some kind of mismatched type ones, some songs that probably all the D12 members or at least more of them should have been on as far as some of those pitches kind of happen. I definitely feel like these concepts, they do have some good strengths on here. I do feel like a lot of these songs have a lot of particular bite and that additional bonus song. So yeah, the once again say the revamped score, if you didn't catch it, just being able to say that 12 songs out of 19 on here, basically at least 10 songs I recommend out of 19 that are original songs, and then the two mixtape freestyle songs that are remix songs that I have to say it's 12 out of 19, so I'd give this project like a 7.25 out of 10. Pretty good concept for that. It's an excellent type stuff. The social score, I'm going to go ahead and say the social score of this particular mixtape would be, I'll go ahead and say the social score of this particular product would be an 8 out of 10. Just, I like the bite of this particular product, just the fact that once again, this is like some vanilla rap for folks that remember Eminem and D12 back in like the early 2000s. Some of those pitches of like all the chemistry they had in the early 2000s. Standard Shady Aftermath type label and those sorts of pitches, their dominance in like the 2000s. It just meets like a mean streak of like some dark kind of horrorcore type fare. The embrace of like some new allies like King Gordy and some of these folks from Rock Bottom, some of those type pitches kind of get. This really the mixtape embrace works pretty well and some new angles that just fits and is pretty fitting. I really like this overall dark autumn brush that this project particularly kind of has. A lot of snap within that relative sense. There's a couple buzz singles on here, or at least songs that probably could be buzz singles. Some songs like I would say That's the Way That Goes, We Back, some of those type ones. Suicide, which has a posthumous proof. Suicide, which has like a posthumous proof verse, so it's pretty good relative buzz to kind of get some of that, at least some gems on here. Probably what would have been the icing on the cake if there had been at least one Eminem verse, something like that. I know probably folks would have went Blitzkrieg crazy around the time because Eminem was completely gone in 2008. Would have been an excellent concept to at least gotten one song with him on there, but still relative pitch that there is some good stuff from like the D12 crew. There is some good stuff from like the D12 crew, and they nail it pretty damn well. So it's definitely a haunting type project. Great for autumn makeshift and some of that type fare, some house parties, some local type stuff. Like I was saying, this is a more localized type project, minus like a small handful of like horrorcore dance bounce songs that have some commercial vibe. But this is kind of vanilla rap meets like mixtape fare in like a horrorcore type sense. So it's a good concept of just embracing those two lines and synchronizing them, I'd have to say. So in terms of the future, like D12 has not put out a project since 2015 with the Devil's Night mixtape from 2015, which was a pretty good concept. I reviewed that back in the day on Acid Roots as far as those pitches kind of happen. So the only project I have left to review that I haven't would just be the limited edition mixtape from 2003, which does have proof on there. It might even have Eminem on there. I'm not really as full-blown sure, but there was like a secret mixtape that came out in 2003. I'm going to get to this. So that's a pretty good pitch. And then there's, of course, like the Devil's Night from 2001, the 20th anniversary, which has some extra songs in there. So I'm going to get to those particular pitches. But yeah, this is a better look for a mixtape compared to what I thought it was going to be. Or at least this is a relatively pretty super look for this particular mixtape, and it has that autumn brush and overall horrorcore type bite that has a lot of appeal about it. So it's easy enough to recommend, and especially for a free project, it's an easy kind of download and has plenty of gems on here.